Did you miss out on this week's Yu-Gi-Oh! Headlines? Well, it's time to get you up to speed on last week in Yu-Gi-Oh! Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo, and welcome to Last Week in Yu-Gi-Oh! The show where we cover all of the biggest Yu-Gi-Oh! Headlines from the previous week. Now, at the time of recording this video, YCS Prog has just come to a close, and we've got a lot to discuss when it comes to that, and we'll be discussing that towards the end of the video, since that's pretty much the breaking news of the end of this week. But, starting off with some other news, there is one thing I did want to mention because I forgot about it last week, and that is the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links is now available on Steam. This is really cool because before it was only available on mobile, and this is good for two reasons. First off, it means that anyone who basically has a PC and can access Steam can now play Duel Links on their computer, and second off, it makes it much more easier for a lot of people who maybe want to stream the game to just have that ability to do so now because it's on PC. Before, they'd have to go through a bunch of back-end channels to be able to hook up their phone to have it set up for streaming, and it was a little bit more convoluted and complicated, but now that it's on PC, it's much easier to stream, and as much as I don't personally like Duel Links, I think it's good for not only people who want to play the game, but for also just pretty much to spread Yu-Gi-Oh! Worldwide and give the game even more publicity, because with more people streaming, that means more people are going to watch it, more people are going to be interested in the game, and that ultimately is going to help grow the community as a whole, and I think that's just pretty much is all upside when you look at it that way. Now, moving on to this week's headlines, it was actually a rather slow week when looking back, because I was compiling the list of, major events that happened, and realistically, not a whole lot happened in terms of the news front, but one of the biggest things that did transpire was the Link VRAINS Pack being fully spoiled as well as released in the OCG. Now, the Link VRAINS Pack, as you guys have known from previous episodes, has had a lot of hype around it because a lot of the cards in this set are just absolutely fucking absurd, and that's great. We were hoping that a lot of these cards were going to help revitalize old archetypes and make them, hopefully semi-competitively relevant, but even relevant even just for your local game shop if you want to test out some of your old fan favorite archetypes. So ultimately, we got the last of the set revealed, not only in terms of new Link monsters, but also in terms of what cards are going to be released in the set as a whole. So let's start off with the new Link monsters. We have a lot of them, but the funny thing is about these Link monsters is that compared to the first set of Link monsters where it was one after another was just busted and even more busted, that's kind of tapered down. So when you look at the first one, like the Noble Knight Link monster, so the Noble Knight Link monster is okay. It allows you to just do some really cool things, especially exclusive to the Noble Knight archetype. The biggest issue is that it doesn't really do anything to make Noble Knights just completely, absolutely busted. Like if you're comparing this to something, like the Burning Abyss Link monster, or the Lightsworn Link monster, or the Crystron Link monster, there's no comparison. Like, this card is not nearly as broken as those other ones. However, one interesting thing about the Noble Knight Link monster is the fact that it is generic. It only requires warrior monsters and is able to search warrior monsters with its effect. So that's pretty cool, because that means you can search stuff like BLS and add it to your hand. And sure, you may not be able to use it the turn that you add it, but that means you have a BLS coming on your next turn, and your opponent has to have a way to deal with that. Otherwise, they're probably just gonna fucking lose, because BLS is just one of those bombs that pretty much is just a game ender when it hits the board. Then we had some other Link monsters as well. There was the Ritual Beast Link monster, which again is a fairly decent Link monster for what it does. It has 3 separate effects, and they're all okay, but again, the biggest issue is, one, it's for Ritual Beast, which is a rather outdated archetype. Like, if this card existed back in 2015, then we'd be talking, but you also have to remember the fact that Ritual Kanahawk is at 1 in the TCG, whereas it's at 3 in the OCG, so that actually makes a substantial difference in how good Ritual Beast can perform, at least here in the TCG, and also the fact that, consistency-wise, the deck isn't nearly up to par with some of the decks that we have available to us now. So, again, good piece of support, but not like the best, most broken support like we've seen in some of the other archetypes. Then we also have the Invoked one, which again, is okay for Invoked, but at the same time, it's not what Invoked needed. I'm personally not going to be playing Book of the Law or Omega Summon just because the Invoked Link monster is able to search them. It's just like, it's not what it needed. It's pretty cool that it can add Invocation to hand, which, I mean, that's a pretty neat effect because that means you can get multiple Invocations because Invocation isn't once per turn, so that's pretty nice. But, you know, other than that, is it really what the archetype needed? Not really, and I think that's the biggest struggle with a lot of these last Link monsters is that they do things that the archetypes didn't need and don't really boost the archetypes they support up to that higher tier status like some of the first initial Link monsters did. Then there's also the Zephyra Link monster, which is arguably the worst one just because it does like absolutely nothing for the archetype and isn't even really that helpful in any other circumstance. And then the Madolche one, which arguably is tied for the worst. Now again, it's a lot easier to pull off than the Zephyra one, but the effect is so irrelevant. Like, if you're telling me what the issue is with Madolche is you're trying to protect your spells and traps, you're looking at Madolche all fucking wrong. But, I mean, again, that's just neither here nor there, but it's good, I guess, that Madolche has a generic link that they can go into to help them compete in this day and age, even if it is subpar. And then you have the Evil Swarm one as well, which you look at the Evil Swarm one's effects, and you're like, why would I go into this over Ophion at all? Because it doesn't deny your opponent in any way, shape, or form because they're still able to special summon to the extra monster zone, whereas Ophion can pretty much deny that entirely, and it just seems so lackluster in comparison. So it's a little bit of a letdown, but overall, it's still good to have this support for these older archetypes, even just in the form of Link monsters. I made the argument, like with Burning Abyss, that even if the Link monster had no effect, but had 2 Link markers pointing diagonally, honestly, that would be enough. And for a lot of these archetypes, again, they're not going to be the most competitive, but it's cool that they're just going to have that little bit of support that they needed to make them at least semi-relevant, even if it's at your local level. If it's a deck that you really enjoy playing, this is going to be the boost that you needed. And what's really interesting is that the reprints in this set are also incredible. Now, look at cards like Brilliant Fusion and Invocation and Invoked Makaba. All of these cards are included in the Link VRAINS Pack as reprints, lower rarity of course. So hopefully when this set transitions to the TCG, we follow suit with some of these reprints. Now that's not always the case, so keep that in mind, but if that is, that's going to be incredible because bringing down the price of cards like Invocation and Makaba and all these other extremely good meta relevant cards is only just pure upside for people that play competitively, as well as casual players who are trying to get more competitively without having to break the bank. The Link VRAINS Pack is also having a very big impact on the OCG meta as well. For instance, there's a 44-man tournament where, keep in mind, they still have Spiral at full power, and they also have Grinder Golem affecting their Spiral at full power as well. Burning Abyss managed to get in the top 4, 2 slots of the top 4 in a 44-person tournament, with Spiral still being that dominant. Now, you could take that as an isolated incident, you could take it as the fact that maybe the OCG is sick of playing Spiral and they want to play something new, but Spirals did top in the same exact tournament, so is this a sign that Burning Abyss does have a chance? Well, you do have to keep in mind that OCG has Graph and Seer at 3, they also have 3 Skill Drain, and their Burning Abyss is completely different than our Burning Abyss, but it's cool to see that the Link VRAINS Pack is already having an immediate impact on their meta in some form or another. Now getting on to the big piece of news, and that is YCS Prog. I'm going to make a whole video, probably another meta-analysis, just kind of going more in-depth with YCS Prog, but what I wanted to show was this, because this top 32 breakdown, you can take this at either way, but this is good and bad. It's bad because, once again, we still have Spiral taking up 50% of the top 32 cut, and very similarly to YCS San Diego, this is in tune with that. Now, the plus side is look at the diversity from this. There are so many different decks comprised of the other 16 slots that it's just crazy. There's like 7 Trickstar, I think there's 2 Pendulum Magician, 2 Lightsworn managed to make it in the top cut. Then you have an ABC, you have a Dinosaur. There was like some Shadal Zombie Dinosaur, like 60 card variant that made it in there. There's just so much diversity in the rest of the top cut that it gives me very high hopes for, you know, at least looking at the future of where this is going to go. Now, again, you could look at this as a spiral is still an issue that needs to be addressed because it's basically taking up half of the top cut representation for every single premier event since the November 2017 ban list did take effect. But frankly, compared to where we were a month ago with YCS Dallas and YCS London, where spiral was taking up 27 to 29 slots, this is a breath of fresh air, and it's cool to see a variety of 7 different decks, 7 or more different decks taking up slots in the top cut, even if Spiral is still taking up half of those slots. Lightsworn made it to the finals of YCS Prog. Like, if you would have asked anyone if they were expecting a Spiral Lightsworn match in the finals of Prague, no one on this planet was going to expect that. So I think this is still definitely a sign of a healthy metagame. Again, Spiral still might need to go and check, especially when we come up to the next Forbidden or Limited list, but at the same time, this is just leagues ahead of where we were before, and I think it's definitely a good sign. It gives a lot of people hope that, yeah, Spiral may be the best deck, but there's still a lot of different decks that you can play and do well with on a competitive level. But guys, that's it for last week in Yu-Gi-Oh! Let me know down in the comments what your guys' favorite pieces of news were from the previous week. I'd really like to hear your thoughts, and if there's anything I missed, be sure to let me know down in the comments below, because sometimes I do miss pieces of news, and if it's very important, I want to make sure I get it out to you guys. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and if you really found this video insightful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3.